First, let's start with this case. Today, I was out in public with my wife and our 6-year-old daughter. We were at a shopping center, eating bagels in the food court, and my daughter was misbehaving quite a bit. She kept getting up, making noise, and ignoring my attempts to get her to settle down. Whenever I asked her to behave, she'd respond with endless why questions, as kids often do. After repeated attempts to get her to listen, I told her I was going to ask the police for help. There were 2 PCSOs, Police Community Support Officers, nearby in the food court. For those unfamiliar, PCSOs in the UK aren't full police officers. They have limited powers and focus on community support, like resolving minor disputes or talking to the public. I approached them and asked if they could have a quick word with my daughter about why it's important to behave in a public space. They were incredibly kind and came over to explain to her why her behavior might be disruptive to others. They also talked about personal space and the risks of running around in a crowded area. My daughter listened to them completely, took their advice to heart, and behaved for the rest of the day. However, my wife was upset about the situation. She felt that involving the PCSOs was unnecessary and embarrassing. She argued that as parents, we had failed if we needed outside help to manage our child's behavior. She also felt that using authority figures like police to address misbehavior teaches our daughter to fear them, rather than to trust and respect them. I disagree with her perspective. I didn't ask the officers to scare my daughter or discipline her. I simply thought hearing the same message from someone other than her parents, someone she might see as a respected authority in the community, would make an impact. And it did. She listened to them and understood the importance of behaving in public. To clarify, I wasn't trying to frighten my daughter. I wanted her to hear the reasoning from someone she might see as impartial and credible. These were PCSOs, not emergency response officers, and their role is community-focused. I don't believe a 1-minute conversation with a child took away from their duties. The officers were approachable. A young man and woman in their 20s with nothing more than radios and uniforms. They weren't intimidating in the least. The advice they gave was similar to what I'd been telling her all along, but she seemed to respond better when it came from someone outside the family. Am I wrong for involving the PCSOs in this situation? Was it inappropriate or unnecessary as my wife believes? Or was it a reasonable way to teach my daughter the importance of good behavior in public? Let's start judging. You're in the wrong. Leave next time. You need to show her real consequences and how to handle conflicts herself, rather than teaching her to call the police when something isn't going how she wants. You're not in the wrong. I think most people saying you're in the wrong are from the US. Just a guess based off of their reasoning, as I too am from the US and would agree with them, and somehow have skipped over the parts of your post saying you're not in the US. You're not asking emergency workers, but asking community workers to talk to your daughter, and where they simply told your daughter, per asked from another adult's standpoint, how annoying her actions were. Nowhere is that creating fear for the police. If anything, it's reinforcing how mom and dad aren't just talking out the side of their neck about important things. They didn't threaten to arrest her, or did anything to instill fear. Neither did you. Your wife is reacting versus using logic, either out of straight embarrassment or lack of forethought. But honestly, allowing your daughter to disturb others in public is wrong on her part. You tried. From what you've written, she didn't and had the nerve to be upset. You used a method that worked. Edit to add. The more I read these, you're in the wrong responses popping up, the more convinced I am the commenters are not reading past the title. And if they are, they're skimming "lmao" and "sm" at these failure as a parent and the police is parenting your kid comments. Boy, I forget parents of today are supposed to be absolutely positively perfect every step of the way. Should they need help, they're monsters. Monsters, I tell you. Geez. From the title, I was expecting some kind of boogeyman story where you threaten your child with being taken away, but you surprised me. You're not in the wrong. You played it exactly right. Your daughter is on the path to respecting the police without fearing them, and those officers probably had a nice break from the drudgery and suspicion that makes up their average day. If your wife is worried so much about being embarrassed, she should probably take a broader hand in ensuring your daughter doesn't act up in public. Next up, my birthday is coming up, and my partner surprised me with an early celebration. A nice outing with close family members at a great restaurant, followed by drinks, cake, and gifts back at our house. It was a lovely evening, and I appreciated the thoughtfulness that went into the planning. As I opened my gifts, I received a mix of small but meaningful items, candies, jerky, and gift cards to local food spots. These were perfect for my needs, as they catered to my preferences and busy lifestyle. My family clearly knows me well. However, the issue arose with my partner's gift. He has a very materialistic approach to gift giving, and often prioritizes the brand or perceived value of an item over whether it's something I'd actually like or use. Over the years, this has led to some mismatched gifts. The coat. One year, he gave me a coat with a fur-lined hood. While it was objectively nice, it was entirely impractical for me, as I tend to get things dirty quickly and avoid wearing expensive or delicate items. The Puma outfit. Another year, he got me a mostly white Puma outfit. The shoes were too tight and the hoodie was too small. I could exchange the shoes for a bigger size, but the hoodie didn't have a larger size in stock, so it didn't work out. The Keurig. Last year, he got me a Keurig coffee maker. While it was a thoughtful idea, it wasn't practical for me because of its size, too large for my kitchen, and the fact that I don't drink enough coffee to justify its features. I told him it wasn't ideal and suggested returning it, but it was already outside the return window. I ended up giving it to his mom, who used it for her small coffee business. I thought the Keurig situation was behind us, but then today he gave me another coffee maker as my main gift. This time, it's a Ninja brand, but it's just as large as the Keurig and has the same issue. It doesn't fit well under my kitchen shelves. I'd have to place it sideways on the counter, teetering near the sink, to make it work. Along with the coffee maker, he gave me a nice cologne and another hoodie, too small again, but he's already commented about how expensive the coffee maker was and how I better not want to return it like the last one. I feigned excitement in front of our family to avoid making a scene, but I've realized that I won't use it. My $30 Mr. Coffee machine works perfectly fine for my needs, and I don't need all the extra bells and whistles. Would I be the bad guy if I told him I want to return the coffee maker while it's still within the return period? I feel like he isn't considering what I actually want, but I also don't want to come across as ungrateful. Let's start judging. You're not in the wrong. Gifts are supposed to be a gesture of love and understanding. If your partner repeatedly misses the mark on something that should be quite personal, it definitely suggests a deeper issue in the communication or understanding department. 2 years in a row? That's a pattern that needs addressing. Wanting to return a gift doesn't make you ungrateful. It shows that you value sincerity and thoughtfulness over superficial gestures. Have that heart-to-heart talk with your partner. Assess your mutual understanding and compatibility. Remember, it's the thought that counts, and right now, the thought seems a bit misaligned. You're not in the wrong. It reminds me of a friend where her ex-fiancé constantly bought her stuff she didn't care for. She realized he was always buying her stuff that the other wives at his office had. Think the episode of Sex and the City where Big buys Carrie's that gem purse. I think gift-giving can be hard, but these gifts are just strange, trying to force a sense of fancy you don't care about. My husband of 10 years may not be the best gift giver, but he has a note list in his phone, or at least tries buying things I would like. Think a theme like Bridgerton. I hope you can talk this out. You're not in the wrong. You sound practical. He sounds materialistic. Nothing wrong with either of these things when there's communication involved. And I mean clear communication and active listening skills. Ahem. Boyfriend ahem. It's y'all against the problem and not him versus you, you know? Next up, my wife left her abusive husband for me years ago. But at the time, she had to leave her 2-year-old son Kevin, now 17 behind. She couldn't get custody because her ex manipulated the courts into believing she was unstable and off her meds. She's bipolar, and he purposely kept her off her medication to control her. She fought for years and finally gained partial custody when Kevin turned 12, though his father still has majority custody. Around the same time, We had our own son Ian, now 15 beam. Kevin has always resented me, and especially Ian, for taking his mom away. No matter how much Ian and I have tried to be friendly or build a relationship with him, Kevin has consistently been mean and hostile toward us. I've put up with it for my wife's sake because she carries a lot of guilt about leaving Kevin with his dad. We live close enough to my wife's ex that both boys attend the same school. Earlier this week, Ian came home visibly upset and crying. When we asked what was wrong, he revealed that Kevin had started a rumor at school weeks ago that Ian has HIV, which has led to bullying. To make things worse, Kevin also stole Ian's boyfriend, adding to his distress. I was furious. I told my wife that this was the last straw. Kevin was no longer welcome in our house. She pleaded with me to reconsider, saying she could fix the situation and asking me to give Kevin another chance. But I stood firm and asked her, "When are you going to focus on Ian for once?" She looked hurt, and since then, we haven't spoken much. Now I'm questioning if I'm wrong for banning Kevin from our home. I understand my wife's guilt over leaving him in a bad situation with his father, but his behavior is deeply hurtful, especially to Ian, who is our son too. Am I the bad guy for putting my foot down and prioritizing Ian's well-being? Let's start judging. You're in the wrong. It's spectacularly cruel and unfair to ban a teenager from his mother's house. Yes, he's behaved badly. So parent him and guide him to be better. Don't abandon him and shut him out. And no wonder your wife is hurt by the awful comment you made to her, implying that to support Ian, she has to give up Kevin. That isn't how any of this works. You're in the wrong. It's spectacularly cruel and unfair to ban a teenager from his mother's house. Yes, he's behaved badly. So parent him and guide him to be better. Don't abandon him and shut him out. And no wonder your wife is hurt by the awful comment you made to her, implying that to support Ian, she has to give up Kevin. That isn't how any of this works. You're in the wrong, so you want your wife to abandon her son again? Why do step-parents always jump to throwing their step-kids out of the house when they misbehave? Would you be kicking out your bio son if he was acting this way? If you wouldn't, then you need to re-examine and figure out how to punish without kicking him out. The kid has already been abandoned by his mother once and left with an abuser. Now you want her to do it again. Next up, for context, my 33F husband and I host all of our family gatherings. We have a 5-year-old daughter. This story involves my brother, 37M, and his girlfriend, Stacy, 37F, who has a 7-year-old son, George, from a previous relationship. George has severe behavioral issues that have been evident from the first time we met him. He's hyperactive, destructive, belligerent, and frequently nasty. Stacy struggles to manage him, and whenever she brings him to family events, everyone has to stay on high alert. George requires constant supervision, especially around other children and animals. Every gathering with George ends in something broken or chaos. He has broken plates, thrown food, screamed and swore during tantrums, and disrupted events in ways that exhaust everyone. While we've kept quiet because George isn't our child, or even my brother's, it's obvious to everyone that his behavior isn't normal. Earlier this year, during a family trip to our vacation home, George behaved as usual. The breaking point came when he used foul language and said cruel things to my daughter. My husband stepped in, and George cried to his mother, which led to an argument between me, my husband, Stacy, and my brother. At that point, I told Stacy we'd had enough. I made it clear that George was not welcome back in my house until Stacy sought professional help to understand what was wrong and had a documented plan to manage his behavior. At the time, the entire family supported my decision, agreeing it was time Stacy addressed George's issues. We haven't seen them since the summer. Now, with Christmas approaching, we've been locking in plans to celebrate at a ski resort. To clarify, we own a chalet at the resort, and the whole family will be staying with us there. Stacy recently texted me to confirm plans, but I asked her what steps she had taken to address George's behavior. Stacy admitted she hadn't pursued anything official, but insisted his behavior had improved. I told her that without a diagnosis from a medical professional and a documented plan to address his behavior, George wouldn't be allowed to stay in my home. Stacy has since been complaining to everyone, saying I'm discriminating against her son and accusing me of thinking she's a bad mother because she works. She's also claimed I dislike her and George because he isn't my brother's biological child. None of this is true. Now, several family members are pressuring me to relent, suggesting I allow Stacy and George to come under the condition that Stacy takes full responsibility for any damages and agrees to leave if George acts up. I don't want to back down because I want a peaceful Christmas. I also don't want to be forced to kick them out during the holidays if things go south. Am I wrong for refusing to allow George to stay unless Stacy takes concrete steps to address his behavior? Or am I being too harsh by sticking to this boundary? Let's start judging. You're not in the wrong, but I think requesting a medical diagnosis is a bit much. A behavioral plan is totally in order. The diagnosis doesn't matter so much, but the behavior does. She, they, if including your brother, has to be able to address his issues so people feel safe and property isn't destroyed. How will you handle tantrums? How will you handle inappropriate abusive language to others? How will you handle violating rules of physical space? Those are the areas she needs to answer. And if she doesn't have a plan or answer, then no, they can't come. He's getting better is nonsense. You're not in the wrong. Child of the corn. Love it. Very apt from your description. No, little George's behavior isn't getting better. I promise that's wishful thinking on Stacy's part. And if you let them in your home for Xmas, you will almost certainly have to kick them out again, and there will be drama, more drama, pain, teeth gnashing, and angst than a dozen Mel Gibson passion plays. Stick to your guns here, OP. You're not in the wrong. You stated your conditions. If you cave now, you will get no respect and will be telling them that bad-mouthing you to others so they put pressure on you is what works, and so doing anything on their end is not needed. This would then be their go-to tactic. A bland assurance that he has gotten better isn't good enough. If he breaks something, getting any money will be one more huge hassle for sure, with people singing a different tune and urging you to let it go. Tell anyone pressuring you that you don't expect to be able to get any compensation from your brother's girlfriend for damages caused. Would they be willing to give you their word to pay in full in her stead? No? Thought so. That's understandable. So why do they expect you to pay on top of risking having an event at your place ruined by the behavior itself, apart from any monetary damages? You hope they understand that while it's easy to say, you'll be the one left holding the bag. And she doesn't deserve any grace here, as she's done nothing to investigate or address her son's problem behavior.